You're standing in a grocery store, staring at a cooler full of meat. Chicken, beef, pork, maybe some ground turkey on sale. You reach for one of them without a second of hesitation, because your brain already sorted the entire animal kingdom into two silent categories a long time ago. Food, not food. And you never once had to think about it. But here's a question you've probably never asked yourself. Why is there no armadillo in that cooler? It's not rare. It's not endangered. In the southern United States, it's practically everywhere. Digging up your lawn, waddling across highways, breeding faster than anyone can count. There's more available armadillo meat within 100 miles of Houston than there is wild venison. People even ate it during the Great Depression and called it Hoover hog. So the meat exists, the option exists, and yet something in you flinches at the idea. The answer is not what you think. If you asked most people why they don't eat armadillo, you'd get the obvious answers. It looks weird. It's an armored little tank with claws. It's a pest, not livestock. It's just not what we do here. Culture, habit, preference, case closed. That's the modern illusion. The comfortable story that says your food choices are just personal taste, layered on top of whatever your grandparents happen to cook. But taste is downstream of something far older and far colder. Because it looks weird didn't stop your ancestors from eating snails, sea urchins, or the inside of a rotting whale. Humans have eaten almost everything that moves. We are the most omnivorous large animal on Earth. When calories were on the line, gross lost every single time. So a hesitation this strong about an animal this available isn't laziness, and it isn't squeamishness. It's a warning. Something about this specific creature triggered a survival filter, one built over thousands of years, one that decided the risk of eating it outweighed the reward. And that filter is still running inside you, right now, in a fluorescent-lit grocery aisle, thousands of years after the threat first appeared. You just never knew what it was protecting you from. Here's the truth this video is going to prove. Your quiet, unexamined avoidance of armadillo isn't culture, and it isn't coincidence. It's the echo of an ancient survival calculation, one that correctly flagged this animal as a living reservoir of a disease so old and so feared that avoiding its flesh became a reflex before anyone understood why. To understand that reflex, you have to break it into the forces that built it. There are three. The first driver is the disease itself, and it's one of the oldest human nightmares on record. The 9-banded armadillo is one of the only wild animals on the planet that naturally carries Mycobacterium leprae, the bacterium that causes leprosy. That's not folklore. In a 2023 study of armadillo tissue from museum collections across the United States, researchers found the leprosy bacillus in nearly 15% of 9-banded armadillos tested. 1 in 7. Carrying an infection humans have dreaded for 3,000 years. Picture skinning that animal for dinner. Your bare hands pressed against tissue swarming with a pathogen your body has no easy defense against. But here's where it gets stranger. This isn't just a coincidence of biology. It's about heat. The reason armadillos can host leprosy at all is that their body temperature runs unusually low, around 89 to 95 degrees Fahrenheit, cooler than almost any other mammal. M. leprae is a picky, fragile bacterium that can barely grow above 98 degrees. It needs a cold host. The armadillo is one of the few large animals on Earth cool enough on the inside to let it thrive. Evolution didn't design the armadillo as a leprosy factory. It just accidentally built the perfect refrigerator for one. Now, here's the driver your body flagged without ever telling you. It's not just that the animal carries the disease. It's that you don't have to eat it to get sick. Documented cases in Texas, Louisiana, Alabama, Georgia, and Florida trace human leprosy straight back to armadillos. And researchers found that roughly half of those infected couldn't even remember touching one. The bacteria can move through handling, through soil, through the simple act of cleaning the carcass. The danger doesn't wait for the meal. It's on your hands the moment you make the choice. So why does your stomach turn at an animal you've never even been warned about? Because you were never supposed to need the warning. That's the entire point of the instinct.
The mechanism is disgust. And disgust is not a feeling, it's a defense system. Long before germ theory, before microscopes, before anyone knew what a bacterium was, humans survived plagues they couldn't see by developing a gut-level aversion to the things that carried them: rot, open sores, deformity, certain animals. The revulsion came first. The reason came thousands of years later, if it came at all. The psychologist Paul Rozin at the University of Pennsylvania spent decades proving that human disgust evolved primarily as a disease avoidance mechanism, a system tuned to steer us away from contamination before it can reach us. Your ancestors didn't reason their way to safety, they flinched their way to safety. And the ones who didn't flinch, the ones who felt no aversion, who handled the sick animal and ate the questionable flesh, were quietly removed from the gene pool by the very infections the flinchers avoided. That's why the hesitation feels like it comes from nowhere. It doesn't come from your reasoning brain. It comes from every ancestor who lived long enough to pass down the flinch. You inherited their fear without inheriting the memory of what caused it. Not taught, not chosen, just there. But here's the part that seems to break the rule. Plenty of people do eat armadillo, and always have. In Brazil, in parts of the Amazon, armadillo is a traditional food. Rural hunters kill it, clean it, cook it, and serve it, generation after generation. If your disgust is really a universal human survival instinct, how does an entire region ignore it completely? Here's what that exception actually reveals. In 2018, a research team led by John Spencer at Colorado State University studied people in Pará, Brazil, who regularly hunted and ate armadillo. What they found was chilling. The people eating the most armadillo meat had dramatically higher rates of exposure to the leprosy bacterium. The frequent consumers were far more likely to carry antibodies to M. lepri than people who never touched it. The exception didn't break the rule. It confirmed it in real time with real infections. The cultures that override the instinct pay the exact price the instinct evolved to prevent. Your flinch isn't superstition. It's a bill that other people are still paying. Once you see this pattern, you find it stamped all across history. In 1971, researchers made a discovery that stunned the medical world. The 9-banded armadillo could be deliberately infected with human leprosy in the lab because its low body temperature let the bacteria flourish. For the first time, science had confirmed what the instinct already suspected. This animal and this disease belonged together. By the early 2000s, whole genome sequencing sealed it. Scientists compared the leprosy strains in wild American armadillos to strains found in human patients across the South, and they matched almost perfectly. The bacteria were moving between species. The armadillo wasn't an innocent bystander, it was a reservoir. In 2011, the New England Journal of Medicine published a landmark study mapping infected armadillos across Arkansas, Alabama, Louisiana, Mississippi, and Texas, and concluded the central Gulf Coast was an active zone of animal-to-human leprosy transmission. Not the Middle Ages, modern America. That same body of research quietly noted something else. The infected weren't reckless. Many were hunters and gardeners who handled armadillos as a normal part of life, never suspecting the ordinary creature in their yard carried an ancient plague. In 2016, the National Hansen's Disease Program issued a plain public health recommendation: avoid contact with armadillos, and specifically discourage cooking and eating the meat. A government agency in the 21st century formally telling people what your gut had been telling you the whole time. And in 2023, that museum tissue study found the leprosy bacillus in armadillos stretching from the United States down through Bolivia and Paraguay. Proof this wasn't a local fluke, but a deep, wide, long-running relationship between the animal and the disease. To understand why an instinct like this even exists, you have to go back to Paul Rozin, the University of Pennsylvania psychologist who essentially founded the modern science of disgust. Starting in the 1980s, Rozin argued something radical.
He said disgust began as a food rejection system, a mechanism whose original job was to keep dangerous things out of the mouth, and that it later expanded to guard against disease and contamination of every kind. Rosin showed that disgust has a signature no other emotion shares. It's contagious by contact. Touch something revolting to something clean, and the clean thing feels ruined. He called this the law of contagion, the belief, buried deep in the human mind, that once in contact, always in contact. A single brush with the tainted thing feels permanent. Think about what that means for an armadillo carrying leprosy, a disease spread by contact, met by an emotion built specifically to fear contact. Rosin's work suggests your revulsion isn't a random quirk. It's a precision tool shaped by natural selection to solve exactly this kind of invisible threat. The slow, disfiguring, contagious kind your ancestors couldn't see coming, but could learn to avoid. The feeling arrived thousands of years before the explanation. Your body ran the math before science even knew there was a problem. And that same machinery is steering you right now, in ways you'd never connect to a burrowing animal in Texas. It's why you check a sell-by date and feel a flicker of unease you can't quite justify. It's why a faint smell off a piece of chicken makes you throw the whole thing out, even though logic says a quick sniff proves nothing. It's why the sight of mold on one corner of the bread ruins the entire loaf in your mind. The law of contagion, still running, still telling you the taint has spread further than your eyes can confirm. Every warning label, every food safety reflex, every unexplained no you feel toward a certain meal is the descendant of that ancient filter. The armadillo is just the clearest case, because the danger it carries is so old and so specific that the instinct and the science finally line up in plain sight. You think you're a modern person making rational choices. Most of the time, you're an ancient survival system wearing a modern face. So go back to that grocery store, the cooler, the meat, your hand reaching past the chicken without a thought. Now you know what that thoughtless reach really is. A disease older than writing, a bacterium that needs a cold-blooded host, an animal cool enough on the inside to carry it. Ancestors who flinched and lived, and ancestors who didn't and vanished. A revulsion handed down without the reason. A government warning that only confirmed what your gut already ruled. All of it compressed into a half-second decision you thought was your own. The armadillo was never the mystery. You were. Your body has been protecting you from a plague you've never seen, and it never once asked your permission.